Hey Lobos, this is Miss Redding. Today we're going to learn about emotions and the brain. But before we get started, let's take some time to get to know each other a little better. So think about three interesting facts about yourself. Go across the room and introduce yourself to someone new, and take turns sharing with one another. Teachers, you can pause your video and allow your students to participate in this activity. Emotions and your brain. In today's lesson, we're going to learn what happens in our brains as we feel strong emotions. Imagine you just heard someone say something about you that isn't true. How would you feel, and what would you do? Teachers, you can allow your students to complete the warm-up section of their handout. You can pause your videos now. So now we're going to watch a video that explains how emotions communicate with our brains. As you watch, pay attention to what happens in our brains and in our bodies as we experience emotions.
Have you ever wondered what happens inside your brain and your body when you experience strong emotions? What causes your emotions? Why do you feel the way you do? Let's go inside your brain to see what is happening when you feel strong emotions. What you see here, moving up and down the pathways of the brain, are called sensory input. You know, what you see, hear, touch, smell, or taste. Some sensory input triggers emotions in your brain. Some very strong emotions. Let's see what that looks like. Let's say you're walking home from school and suddenly you hear a dog growling behind you. The sound of the growling dog is going to trigger an emotion, fear. And where does this fear go? It heads for the amygdala. This is your amygdala. It's an area in the primitive automatic part of your brain, the part that runs things that you don't do consciously, like breathing or making your heart beat. Think of the amygdala as your feelings alarm. Whenever your brain gets input that is emotional, it sends it here. Your feelings alarm is automatic, and it's always set to go off instantly. When it does, it sends out urgent messages to get your brain and body ready to respond. Stress hormones are released, sending adrenaline rushing through your body. Your heart beats faster to pump more blood to your muscles and brain. Your lungs take in air faster to supply your body with oxygen. Sometimes your body's reaction is so strong that your stomach or your head hurts, or you feel shaky. You might even feel like you're losing control. At this point, you're probably not thinking very clearly. That's not surprising. The amygdala can't think at all. That's not its job. Luckily, it also sends a message to the thinking part of your brain. Hey cortex, wake up. You've got an emotion to deal with.
With a partner, fill in the blanks about the amygdala. That's a pretty cool word. Y'all say it with me. Amygdala. Using some of the words on your handout. Teachers, allow your students some time to work in pairs to complete part 1 of the video section in their handout. You can pause your videos now. So now we're going to watch a video about the cortex and how it works with the amygdala. As you watch, pay special attention to what is happening to your emotion as your emotions are really strong and the cortex gets overwhelmed.
This is your cortex. It's the thinking part of your brain. It's the gray matter, all folded in nooks and crannies, that covers the outside of your brain. It's where you decide what to do with your emotions. The first thing the thinking part of your brain does is try to figure out the situation. What is this emotion? What's really happening? What should I do about it? Now, the thinking part of your brain doesn't work as fast as the automatic part. It takes time for emotional information to get here, and even longer to process it. Sometimes the thinking part of your brain gets overwhelmed. Your emotions can take over and you end up acting without thinking. This is especially true during adolescence, when your amygdala is more active and your emotions can stronger than they used to in the past. So before you act without thinking, you need to notice your strong emotions and use the thinking part of your brain to help you manage them. You take some slow breaths. You take time to think and look around. The growling is muffled. Like maybe the dog is behind a fence. A quick glance tells you that you're right and that you're not really in danger. Whew, that's a relief. And now that you know everything's cool, the thinking part of your brain sends a message back down to turn off your feelings alarm. You continue your walk home. But with all that adrenaline pumping through your body right now, it's going to take a while for the feeling of fear to go away. You just have to keep telling yourself everything's under control.
With a partner, fill in the blanks about the cortex using the rest of the words on your handout. Teachers, you can pause your video and allow your students to complete part 2 with a partner of the video on the section on their handout. What happens if the emotion is really strong and the cortex gets overwhelmed? When the cortex gets overwhelmed, your emotions take over and you can end up doing or saying something that you later regret. Look back at your responses to your warm-up. Give a thumbs up if you said what you would do was the result of your emotion taking over. Now give a thumbs up if you said that what you would do would be the result of your cortex managing your emotions and helping you make a positive decision. We've learned that it's natural if we sometimes react to our emotions without thinking. It's a normal part of being a human being. Managing our emotions is also part of being a human, and luckily, our brains have a built-in way that help us control our actions. All right, let's take a look at 2 different ways a person might respond to the same scenario, depending on what's happening in their brain. So what does the brain say and do? Lenon's little brother accidentally knocked over Lenon's glass of water, and it spilled all over her homework. What do you think Lenon will do if her emotions take over? Teachers, you can pause the video and allow your students to come up with some ideas of what she might do in that situation. So let's take a look. So if Lenon's emotions take over, she might grab him, yell at him, tell him, "You brat, I hate you." Those are some ideas if Lenon's emotions take over. So what do you think will happen if she thinks it through? Teachers, you can pause your video and allow your students to take some time to come up with some ideas about what happens if she thinks it through. So if Lenon's cortex thinks it through, she might calm down, wipe up the water, and tell him, "I know you didn't mean it." So now let's look at a different scenario. So Roland notices that Tanya's looking at his paper while he does an assignment. After class, he finds her assignment on the ground. He reads it and sees that her answers are almost identical to his. With a partner, read the possible responses on your handout and describe what's happening in Roland's brain. Teachers, you can now pause your video. All right, so now think of a time when you reacted to a strong emotion quickly. Before you were able to think through your response, what happened? If you could go back and think it through before responding, what would you have done differently? Teachers, you can pause the video and allow your students to complete the wrap-up section of their handout. Today we learned how our brains process emotions. This week, when you find yourself experiencing strong emotion, pause, take a moment to breathe, and take a few moments to consider what's going on in your brain as you work through it. Until we see each other again, have a wonderful week.